going to the UK, it was quite an interesting experience because so many things that I'd eaten here weren't available in the UK. So many things I was eating over there, of course, weren't available in Australia. So you start to sort of discover a new world of food, and you start to change your mind about how things are. And as a kid growing up in Australia, of course, one of the things we used to eat a lot of was veal. And veal scallops and all sorts of things like that, veal parmigiana, and all those lovely things. But when I got to the UK, veal was a dirty word. People weren't eating it at all. And I had to find a way to get people to eat it. So this was sort of a little invention I made up. And again, it's about land and sea. It's about trying to bring together the flavors of the sea at the same time as bringing together something which is sort of was very, very unfashionable and quite difficult for people to get their head around. So I decided to coat the veal with a bit of egg and some Parmesan cheese. So beat some eggs together and then add to that egg a little bit of salt. And the reason you add the salt to it is because the salt breaks down the white of the egg, and instead of being all gloopy, it actually becomes a lovely coating mixture. And many people, I think, get it wrong about the fact that you should be taking something like a lovely piece of fish and deep frying it. But in reality, all you are doing is protecting the wonderful, delicate flesh of the item that you're actually cooking. That encasing around the outside allows what's inside to be able to be steamed, and that cooks it really, really well. And people eat fish and chips all the time and think it's greasy. Take that batter off, and that fish inside will be perfectly steamed and absolutely wonderful. So there's my little tip on stuff that's being fried. To that, now I've put some parsley in there, and then a really good amount of shaved Parmesan cheese. That now gets all mixed together, and then some veal, and that becomes quite a stiff coating. The veal itself, a piece of topside, a veal topside, and I've sliced a couple of pieces off, and people used to get a big mallet and bash the hell out of it. There's a better way to do it. Take the slice of veal or yearling beef, take a large knife, and just gently push against the actual meat itself, and that breaks down the membranes just enough to make it big enough or small enough or thin enough that when you coat it, you don't have something which is too thick and too fibrous. So just squash it down with your knife, and then you've got yourself a decent piece of meat, which is, so it starts off quite thick, and by the time we're finished, it's going to be a lot thinner and a decent sized piece. Now, that is going to be the simplest, most delicious thing you have ever eaten in your life. And I promise you that although it sounds really, really simple, the flavors of this dish are really quite extraordinary. I might just get another mixing bowl, but I've got one over there. Let's grab that one and mix this all together. So then the salad that goes with it is a really, really important thing, because the salad is what really makes the whole thing come together. And that has got to do with the dressing. So a little bit of olive oil, tiny bit of olive oil, and then the rest of the olive oil is going to go into the pan. Now, I said before about oil in the pan or oil on your meat, but don't forget we are frying this, so it's a very, very different thing altogether. Try and work out where that goes to, and work out how this stove works again. It's hot. And the oil I want to shimmer, so I'll make this dressing. Just some olive oil, chopped anchovies, which is our salting agent, so I've put no salt or pepper with this at all. Some lemon juice squeezed into it. So lemon, anchovies and olive oil. And that's just going to be sat like that. And we'll drop that over our rocket in a moment. But again, no salt. You don't want to use salt, especially with things like anchovies. And that's another thing. They call them anchovies. They're anchovies. Poms, honestly. Flour the veal, both sides, just quite liberally. Just enough to be able to make sure that batter sticks to the outside of it. And although I say it looks really simple, it is something really quite delicious. And you don't really need to be very, very complicated with food. Mix the veal in with that mixture. and give it a really good hard time. You know, I'm saying about the souffle and stuff, slap it around. The veal the same. Use your hands, feel what you're cooking. Try and use all your senses and try and think about not just what things taste like, but the sound, the smell, you know, the feel of it, the texture of it. That's when food becomes really exciting. When you change from the cook who just thinks about the taste and the look, the aesthetic, and you become a cook who suddenly is involved in the way it smells and the way it sounds and the way it feels, just there. Thanks very much. Guys, can you put your hands together? This man has done all the work out the back. He's a bloody brilliant man. Thank you very much. Now, you'll see this is cooking really quickly, and it has to cook really quickly because, as I said, inside here, in that casing, is really a lovely piece of steamed meat. And if I start to cook it too much, what happens with steam, as you all know, is you've got water vapor. And that water vapor starts to come out and the whole thing starts to stew. So now our rocket leaves go into our anchovy mixture with our dressing. Stir that around. We take our veal's nearly there. I can hear it. Can you hear that? It's gone from being a sizzle to more like a sort of bubbling sound as if you were dropping water into a bit of oil. That means the meat's cooked properly and the water's starting to come out. It's down the middle of the board. We take ourselves a bit of lemon, drop it on the corner. We take our lovely bits of veal. And don't put them on paper, please, whatever you do. If your oil's lovely and hot, it's absolutely perfect. Bring it straight out and drop it straight away on there, because if you put it on paper, all you're doing is sucking out the water out of it and nothing else. Pour that into there. Drop some butter into a pan and a really good amount of black pepper. The butter starts to go what I call nut brown or beurre noisette. And the pepper, because pepper is a spice, starts to fry, and you'll have a lovely sort of fried peppery flavour that goes with it. Starts to come up. Add a bit of lemon juice to it. And you'll see it all starts to froth together. And that frothy stuff is exactly what I want. Pour that spoonful of froth over the top of our veal. And there, my ladies and gentlemen, is a veal dish inspired by my dad. Thanks, Dad.